Thank you so much for joining Mrs. Rogers Stamperhood's Tune In Tuesday. I'm Mrs. Rogers, Sharon Rogers, an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Wells, Maine in the USA. And every second and fourth Tuesday, I like to bring you an online class. Now, if you would like the class kit that goes with tonight's class, all you need to do is place an order of $35 or more before shipping and handling and tax in my online store. The link is right down below in the description of this video, and that link contains a host code that is specific to this class. So using that link gets you automatically on the list for me to mail you this class. If your order is $50 or more before shipping and handling and tax, I will also provide you a full package of these elegant faceted gems that you can add on to either the projects for tonight or other projects that you have. These are no longer available. I picked them up before they went away recently. And if I do run out of these packages, then I will substitute another package of gems that are of similar value. Now let's get started. I've got something a little bit unusual for what I do on a Tune In Tuesday. I'm going to show you the painter's tape technique. I will be using 3 colors: Petal Pink, Daffodil Delight, and Flirty Flamingo. And the reason why I chose those is because I'm using the Hello Irresistible paper from the online exclusives. Now, if you are getting the kit from me, the class kit, you may get this color combination, or you may get the greenish one as well. This is it's got Soft Seafoam and Pretty Peacock and Lost Lagoon. Those are the combinations in there. We're gonna base it off this one for what we're doing right now. I'm gonna bring in a piece of scrap paper here. It's already got some yucky stuff on it. I'm beginning with a piece that is larger than I need because I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to take my blue painter's tape, and I have folded this over a little bit on this edge just to give me a little bit of a handle. And I'm going to cut it longer than I need and give myself a handle on the other side as well. So there I have that. Okay. What we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just press this down right here for a second. I want to see kind of what I got going on here. And so we'll just, these don't have to be exact because, as I said, we're going to be cutting it down. So we'll have something that looks like that, a little space in between there maybe, or maybe not. I just want to make sure that the card base that I'm starting with, the layer is large enough to accommodate 3 stripes, because I have 3 colors I want to use, and it is. So I'm going to want to cheat this down a little bit, I think. So it's always a good idea to start with your middle one. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to put these, oops, I ripped my paper. You got to be very careful. And what I should have done is de-stick this with my hands a little bit. Even though it is painter's tape, you do want to de-stick it a little bit. And so I was glad I can show you that. The other thing that most people find helpful is if you rip it off at a diagonal, it seems not to bother as much. All right, so I'm de-sticking this one as well. I'm going to go ahead and get my Daffodil Delight, I don't know what that is, open, and I'm going to press this into the pad. All right, here we go. And then I'm going to come over here. Now I had a little rip in that one, so I'm just going to do it on the other side. And we're gonna lay this right down about in the center. Okay, we'll do that. And then when I lift it up, see, we've got this really cool look going on here. I'm gonna go ahead and do the petal pink right above it. Again, I'll press this into the ink pad a little bit. And we'll lay this right down on top. And it will peel away. Petal pink is the most light here. So I've kind of got a sunset kind of color theme going here. And because I am inking basically from the long end to the other long end, all of these strips are about the same length. Except for I just got my hands in that one. I didn't hold on to it, so I think I need to re-ink that one just a little bit on this end. All right, let's go ahead and put that down there. This one wants to curl, doesn't it? There we go. Pull it up, and there we have that. So this is just a cool kind of background to have, and this is pretty simple. All you need is some painter's tape. And of course, you can play with the widths, whatever painter's tape width that you have. You want to make sure your hands are clean afterwards. And then I'm going to bring in this Good Feelings stamp set. Just a bunch of large sayings on here. And I'm using the You're on My Mind and in My Heart. I'm going to bring in the Memento ink. And we'll just ink this up. It's a rather large stamp, so I kind of like inking it upside down so that I can see that it's all inked. And then we're going to put it right on there, right on the top. You could set it at an angle if you want to, but I like it just like that. Let's go ahead and trim this down a little bit. So I'm going to trim it right to the bottom of the paint strip here, and the top of this one. And then I think we can go ahead and come in a little bit on the edges, just a little bit. So if I look at this piece right here, the measurements are 3 1/4 by 2 5/8. It's a little bit, it's not the same dimensions as maybe the layer on my card front is going to be. So I need to change that a little bit. And I need to separate these two colors. So this is the Designer Series paper. I could also use this side as well. But a nice big pop of black would look really, really nice in here. But something that is the same width around here is not going to look quite right when I bring it to my card. So how do we do that? Well, nothing says that it has to be the same border all the way around. Let's go ahead and cut this one down just a little bit. Let's start by 1/2 inch. So if I do this, then we've got something that looks a little bit more pleasing in here. It's got a little bit of a side measurement here, but I have something else that we can do as well. We happen to have a new package of, this is called Ribbon Duo Combo Pack, and one of the ribbons in here is Petal Pink. And it's a fairly thin ribbon. It's the first time I've opened this, so I hate trying to get that plastic off. I usually just try to slide my scissors in back of this cellophane piece, and then I have this. So let's go ahead And what I can do is mount this, because it'll be easier to tie when it's all mounted. Let's get my paper trimmer out because I'm done with my paper trimmer. We'll put this so that it's got this nice border, even on 3 sides. And then we'll bring in our ribbon and we can tie a pretty little bow around this. Now, if it's difficult for you to tie a little bow when it's kind of moving on the edge of this card, you can move it to the center and tie the bow and then slide it over, or you can go ahead and take maybe a glue dot or a little bit of sticky strip. I said sticky strip. It's not sticky strip, it's tear and tape. I don't know how many times I am going to make that mistake. I'm gonna put that back here. I'm gonna take my length of ribbon, a knot in the end there, and we're just gonna put this right around here like that. And so now that's kind of stuck in place, and we can go ahead and tie our bow. How long is the ribbon? I don't know. If I go over here and measure it, it looks to be about 18 inches. And I think 18 inches will be enough to tie a bow. I hope so. I think one of my ends should have been longer, but I think I can make this work. Thumbs, don't fail me now. All right, so there I've got my little bow. And I don't like the bow in the middle. So I know, oops, I've got this ribbon twisted. Gotta undo it, because we gotta untwist it. We want it to lay nicely. Even if I am going to use it, some dimensionals to pop it off. Let's try this again. I want my bow up here at the top. Let's go ahead and just tie that. And we'll fiddle with it until we get it how we like it. This ribbon actually ties pretty nicely. All right. Cut these ends. My scissors slipped. You gotta fix that a little bit. There we go. I still didn't cut that nicely. I think my scissors need some sharpening. All right, so now we have something that looks like this. We're gonna pop this off with some dimensionals. That separation always helps give it a little character. All right, and so there, and we can put this, I think I'm gonna angle this a little bit there. What do we need to put on there for some gems? We need some sort of gem, don't we? Let's see what we've got here. You know, I have not used my rhinestones in a while. Talked about using them a little bit earlier or later, depending on which project I put first in this video. Let's go ahead and put some of these on here. So we can even put one down here. These rhinestones are something everybody needs. Okay, we've got those 3. We can put on some more though. I think more would be nice. 4. Need an odd number. Let's go ahead and put 2 down here. So there we go. Now we just need to mount this onto a card base. Let's see how this looks on a base of Flirty Flamingo. Oh yeah, doesn't that look nice? I think it looks nice. We will go ahead and just cut this down. So we want to score it in half. I always make 2 cards at once, or at least 2 card bases at once. And we will fold this. And let's go ahead and apply some glue or your favorite adhesive. Now, if your ribbon is a little bit looser than you want, you can go ahead and tack that down with a little mini glue dot. I don't like it showing, you know, popping up there like that. So I am gonna take a little mini glue dot here. Just stick it right under there. And nobody's the wiser. Just, there we go. And so there is your quick and easy background. So just painter's tape. This card features the background stamp Watercolor World. So if you don't know what a background stamp is, first of all, you can find them beginning on page 118 of the 2023-2024 catalog. And there are 2 pages of them. And we used the Berry Harvest on a recent Friday Night Live video. And you've seen me use the Rays of Light. And tonight we're going to be using Watercolor World. What makes these background stamps is they're very large. In fact, they need the largest block that Stampin' Up! Carries, and that is the F block. Now, you can get away with not using it. However, for a lot of the techniques, it is probably easiest if you do have a block. It takes it off your surface, whether you're using it face up or face down. It does give some space between your surface. I want to bring in a piece of basic white cardstock, and this is cut 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. So that's 2 little marks before the 4-inch mark and 2 little marks after the 5-inch mark. And this is going to allow me just to have a nice size mat to go with it. I am going to emboss the land here. So you can see it's all the land pieces that are part of the stamped image. And this is a distinctive stamp set, which means there are lighter and darker spots. But in order to emboss, I want to emboss this in a green. In fact, I'm going to be using Old Olive. But I don't have Old Olive embossing powder. But no fear, we can use clear embossing powder with our Old Olive ink pad. I'm going to get out my embossing tray here. So here's my embossing tray. I need my Versamark. I might as well go ahead and use my embossing buddy as well, just to take some of the static and or oils off that paper. I'm going to try not to touch it from this point forward. Now, in order to emboss, we're going to need clear embossing powder. Stampin' Up! Does not sell the bottle of clear embossing powder all by itself, but you know, it does sell it with a couple of other ones that are very popular. And so on page 136, you'll see that you can get the basics, which are black, clear, and white. You know I use white on black all the time. Black is a nice color to use also when you have a lighter color of cardstock, but there's also clear. And so that's 3 little bottles of embossing powder for $18. And let me tell you, those will last a really long time. Stampin' Up! Has rebranded several times since I got this one. This was actually when we could buy them singly. and I still have some left. So I'm going to bring in my stamp, and our classic ink dries pretty quickly once stamped, but if you want to have it last a little bit longer and stay wet a little bit longer so that you can go ahead and emboss, then you can use this next trick. You can ink your stamp with Versamark first. And when I have these large background stamps, I prefer to bring my pad to the stamp instead of the other way around. And now I'm going to ink it up with my Old Olive. And so the Versamark isn't going to hurt this pad. Let's go ahead and now put this right down here. Gonna run off the page a little bit, but that's okay. Now this will probably stick, but you want to have some nice firm pressure. And now, even though we have Versamark, we are going to work a little bit quickly here. And I'm going to take my embossing powder and just pour it on. Shake off the excess. Now there are a couple spots I see here that there's a little bit of stuff sticking right there I don't want. I grabbed an edge there and I grabbed an edge over here. Set my powder aside, and now I'm going to heat this. And you will be able to see in the light when the powder starts to melt. And I'll try to hold it so you can see some of that. Oh, you can see it's getting a little darker there. My powder has started to melt. Now it's not going to be even on this because remember, this is a distinctive stamp. So the ink will be in different tones on my card. I just want to make sure that I get all the powder melted. Oh, I don't think I melted this over here. There we go. And again, I can tell when the powder's melted because of the change in the color, and it gets shiny. And so now I'm done. Now, around the land masses, what do we have? We have water. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in a brush, and this is Head Balmy Blue on it, but I'm going to really switch to Tahitian Tide, which is a brighter, cheerier color. As you're watching this video, we are getting ready at the place where I work, which is a church, to have our global outreach emphasis, which means we're celebrating work that our partners do, and we support our partners, the work that they do around the world, which includes local to me, Sanford, but also in other parts of the United States and around the world. So what's happening is, because I have the land masses protected by the clear embossing powder, that Tahitian Tide ink is not sticking to it. All right, and I can make it as light or as dark as I want. And just as my land masses are not a solid color, I'm not working real hard to make my Tahitian Tide a really strong, solid color. There are some lighter areas and darker areas, just as there is in the ocean. I'm going to close up that ink pad, and I'm going to bring in I was going to bring in Misty Moonlight, but I think I'm going to bring in Night of Navy here. And just to darken up some of my edges a little bit. Now, because I'm going darker, I don't need to clean off my ink pad, but I'm going to just bring in some darker Night of Navy around the edges. Just kind of adds a little bit of a different tone to this. Kind of like it. All right, and maybe I just put a little bit over the top. So I'm blending, I'm making my own colors here, really. I have some Tahitian Tide, and I've got some Night of Navy peeking through. I've got all sorts of colors going on here. But it's pretty simple. And we've made a really pretty background here. Now, one thing that you want to do before you go further is you want to take a soft cloth and wipe off this area here. So I have just a paper towel, and I'm just going to buff this a little bit because I don't want any excess ink that might be laying over the top to transfer to anything else. And so you can see there was a little bit of ink that I lifted off there. And so now we're almost done. We're just ready to finish up this card. Let's go ahead and see what we want to do to mount this on something. I always like a nice pop of black. So we can do a nice pop of black. We could also do Night of Navy. Here's what the Night of Navy would look like underneath. I really prefer the black myself, so I'm going to stick with the black. And I want just a very thin piece, so I'm going to make this the standard layer, which is 4 by 5 and a quarter. 5 and a quarter by 4. I'm probably cutting off the screen a little bit. You probably can't see it all, but I'm giving you the measurements verbally. All right, so we have this layer. We're going to take some glue. So I can't even recall if I mentioned it, but this technique that I just showed you is emboss resist. So that embossing is resisting the blue ink that I was adding over the top. And you can do an emboss resist with clear. So if you just stamped in Versamark and embossed in clear, whatever the color cardstock underneath, in my case it was white, would stay white. Oh, I got ink all over me. And then you can color around it. So here's just a really simple look here. So here we have a card base that is just your normal card base. 5.5 by 8.5, scored and folded in half. So here we have just this nice little note card. Probably all sorts of sentiments that go with this. Well, let's see if I can find one that I want to use here. I'm going to bring in a piece of basic black cardstock, and I'm bringing in the stamp set Something Fancy. It's my favorite sentiment set. It had debuted in the last mini catalog, and now it is in the full catalog, and it has coordinating dies that go with it. Something Fancy dies, which by themselves are great to have because you've got tags and you've got some basic shapes that are just dressed up a little bit. They layer. This one layers with the other one. And you've got some toppers for tags, and you've got some really great sentiments. And I think that You Matter to So Many goes with the theme of the week that I'm dealing with at Curtis Lake. So I'm going to emboss this, but I'm going to emboss this in white because, of course, you know I love embossing in white on black. I'm just going to pour my powder on. See if I can filter it back in without really getting it elsewhere. I can. Put the cover back on. before I spill it. And yes, I have spilled it plenty of times on my work surface over the years. We'll just heat it with a heat tool. And now we will die cut it using this particular die. And so we have this, and we'll go ahead and bring this. Now, the only problem is it's a little bit big. It covers up a lot of my stuff. So I may decide to, I think I'm not going to use that die cut. I think I'm going to just trim around it so I don't cover up the beautiful map. I know a lot of you aren't fussy cutters, so you can certainly use a different die. I'm not going to go hunting in my dies right now. I'm just going to trim around this. It's a pretty short sentiment, so it's not going to take very long at all. And I just sort of follow the letters, follow the ins and outs. And so we have something that looks like that. And we just have to figure out where, I think down here, it's such a tough call on, I think right over here. Right over Europe and Russia. And let's go ahead and bring in, let's see how the Tahitian Tide Baker's Twine works here. Let's see if that's a little bit too much competing stuff. Yeah, I think that's too much competition for that. I love Baker's Twine because it's so easy to tie, for one thing. Okay, let's take this little bit of basic white here, tie a little bit of a bow, fiddle with it. I twisted it, so let's just fiddle with it a little bit. That's good. We're going to need a mini glue dot. Let's go ahead and we'll stick this to the mini glue dot. Now, the glue dot is larger than the knot, so I'm just going to curl it around onto itself. And let's go ahead and we'll stick it right there. Then we need some dimensionals on the back of this guy. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the edge right here. I don't want to waste that. And let's see, we'll just put this right here, I think, and trim the ends. So we have just a pretty simple card, a note card. We can write something inside. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and we could take our background stamp and then stamp off. Let me show you what I mean. Now, I did notice that I caught some edges, and I want to go ahead and give you a quick tip on what you can do to make sure that you're not catching these edges. First of all, I need to clean my stamp, because I don't want to get all inky when I do this. I'll just take my chamois and clean it off. There we go. Now, when I take this off the stamp, off the block. I'm going to bring in some scissors. Now I have some old scissors from before, but you can use any scissors you want. And if there are places where there seems to be a lot of excess rubber, or places that you have caught an edge, you can just trim that off with some scissors. Now, one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to angle your scissors like this. You don't want the bottom, the gray part, to be undercut. If anything, you can do the other way. You can take an X-Acto knife. I'm not so good with X-Acto knives, so like there's a little space in here that looks like it probably might be a problem. Just want to make sure I don't cut into my stamp, because obviously if you are doing some surgical procedures on your stamp, you're going to void the warranty. But I'm taking a little bit of a chance here because, first of all, this is how we used to deal with our stamps. When I first started, we had to trim all our stamps before putting them on a block. And that was where we saved some of the cost. I'm gonna cut in here a little bit. Just pull that out. And let's see, I can see that there's a little bit of ink around this edge. So I'm just angling it a little bit, so I'm cutting off the top of that red rubber from the gray. So you might be even seeing some of that gray stick out underneath. We're going to call that good. And I'm going to take my ink pad. I'm going to ink it up again. And I don't want that full strength because somebody's not going to be able to read whatever I write in there. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp onto some scrap paper. And I think I've taken enough ink off so that when I stamp again, it's going to be fairly light. I'm hoping anyway. Yeah, see, we've got a nice little world in there. It's not exactly centered, but you get the gist of it. But that is our card. So for this background, and again, the background aspect of this was we were using a background stamp, and we were featuring that background stamp. And then we also used the technique of emboss resist so that we could get our land, our continents, in green, and then we could use a blending brush to color the waters around it. I think this is a really, really pretty card. It's just the color combination is really pretty striking in person. I hope that's coming through on the video. I recently, as in just a few days ago, got a new die set, and that is the Meadow dies on page 164. Now, it has been unbundled, but it did have a coordinating stamp set, and that is the one that's found on page 66, Quiet Meadow. This stamp set didn't really do much for me personally, although I could really probably see making some shabby chic stuff with some of these images. But I do love the dies, and I love the dies most of all because they make great silhouettes. Whether I'm creating a sunset background or just what I'm going to do today, I think silhouettes look beautiful. I'm going to bring in some boho blue, and I'm going to bring in a blending brush. And I probably should protect my surface. Let's bring in a piece of scrap paper here. And I'm going to create an ombre effect. So that's the first background technique I'm going to show you. And to create an ombre effect, you want to make it darker in one area, and then you want it to gradually get lighter. So if you always start at the bottom and blend upward, you'll get that effect, because most of the ink is going to come off first at the bottom and then it will go up. I'm not generally a very patient blender. I think I mentioned that before. But the more you blend, the smoother things look. And you can see I have a nice ombre effect going. I think I want it a little bit darker here at the bottom. I'm going to spend a little bit more time here at the bottom. Nice, even pressure, circular motions. And when I take that away, you can see the definite ombre effect. All right, so that's one background that you can do. You can just create an ombre background. But I'm going to use these dies, and I'm not just going to do a silhouette effect. I'm going to do something else as well. So there's this flower, and then there's this little flying butterfly. There's another butterfly in here too, but I'm just going to use these two right now. And if you do end up placing an order of $35 or more before this coming Sunday evening at 7 p.m., I will send you the die cuts for these two things so that you can complete the projects, as well as the other piece that we're going to need in just a second. So let me go ahead and die cut this for you. We'll need our 1, 2, and 3 plates. And then I'm going to just place that there and place that there. And when I run it through, I have a couple of nice silhouettes. Now I'm not done with this. Now, if your die cut stays inside, a lot of times it'll come out if you just drop it. Of course, it's making me a liar right now. So I'm going to get my Take Your Pick tool. Oh, wait, I don't need to. When I dropped it, it did loosen it up, but every time I go to grab it, it comes back in. Oh, fine. I'll just poke that out. One poke and it comes right out. So I have a nice little silhouette of a daisy there. I'm going to take a piece of thick basic white cardstock. And place this on here. Now, if you want to use this for just my thick basic white, I'm going to put this on here. Now, if you want to use this for another project, because you can, then simply make sure your piece is probably a little bit less than a card front in size. And then you can use this piece after you're done working on the card that we're working on now. I know I'm being a little secretive or cryptic here, but I don't want to ruin the surprise. Although, honestly, I probably did ruin the surprise when I showed you the video, or the picture in the video before this instruction. All right, it's not going to cooperate here, so I'll just take it out the old-fashioned way. There we go. There we go. So I don't need this, but I can use this maybe on the inside of my card. I'm going to be working with the negative here. I have a piece of basic regular white, or regular basic white cardstock. It's the thin stuff. This is the thick stuff, because you want this to hold up to what we're going to be doing in just a second. But this is just the regular basic white. Let's go ahead and protect my surface there. Oh, wait. I've already got the piece that I need. Sorry. This is it. We're going to take this ombre one, and we're going to position our flower in there. I'm going to position it off to the left a little bit. Now you have to make sure it stays still here. So if you want to tack it down with a little bit of washi tape or a glue dot on the back, just very gently, you can do that. I think I can manage to do it okay, just holding it. So I'm going to hold this down here and I'm going to blend in here. So it's the same boho blue that I was using before. I'm just going to make it darker all over. It is easier if you do tape it down because then you can re-ink this a lot easier. All right, so when I remove this, see how you have this darker flower here? And then look at when we push this on and then maybe we put a butterfly in here. We have something that looks like that. We put this down here. So we have a very simple look, but we've got a background. It's not a shadow of this one. It's just something further in the background. Now, when you have things in the background, they do appear lighter. But this is just an artistic look that I'm going for. So I'm gonna put that down right there. I could put some other flowers in there. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll put another one right over here. Maybe I'll put another one right over there. And we'll ink up again. All right. So I have my two flowers there. And then I put this over the top and look at how cool that looks together, huh? And then we can put this butterfly in here and maybe it's coming. Let's see, let's put this one up a little higher, I guess. Then it's coming right over here to this one. And we just need a saying after that. Let's go ahead and glue this piece down. Just take a little bit of liquid glue. I should use my mat, my silicone mat, but I'm gonna live on the wild side here. Just a little bit of glue is all you need, so don't get too heavy-handed. I'm gonna press that down. Now, if I did want my butterfly to face the other way, I could just flip it over. But I'm going to use the die cut the way I cut it out. There we go. I think something that would be good on here might be a splatter stamp. Let's go see if I can find one in my stamp sets. Okay, my Perched in a Tree stamp set does have a splatter stamp. So let's go ahead, just add a little bit of something to this, and we will do it in Memento black ink. If you have a smaller splatter, that might be good too. But let's go ahead and see how this looks. We'll just sort of we're just adding a little something there. Okay. And now what we need to do is add this to a card front. So I think I'm going to go with the boho blue. We'll just make this a monochromatic card. Monochromatic just means one color. And let's see, my bone folder is hiding over here. Oh, my card is too big. We're gonna have to cut that down a little bit, aren't we? I'm not sure why I cut that the wrong size. So let's see, I want to cut it 4 inches. Yeah, seems all right. We want to make sure it's 5 1/4, so it does need to come down a little bit. I'm going to trim it off the other end. I thought the size looked a little funny, but all right. And so now here we have this. So I'm saying monochromatic, and I'm saying one color, and you're thinking, but there's blue and black. Black technically is not a color. Neither is white. Look it up. It's true. All right, so there we have that. And I think some nice rhinestones. You know, you cannot have too many of these in your collection. We have all sorts of wonderful gems, but boy, these things go with absolutely everything. So let's, oh, you know, I probably should put a sentiment before I start adding gems, right? Now, if you didn't want a sentiment, don't put them, but I think one going right here would look lovely. So let's see if we can stamp something. Now remember, I was just using the Meadow dies, so I need a sentiment that is from another stamp set. I'm gonna bring in a piece of basic white scrap, and the sentiment I'm using is with Deepest Sympathy, and it's about 3/4 of an inch in height. So I'm going to make this just a, if it's an inch, it's a little bit smaller than an inch, which is fine. It's still bigger than 3/4. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the ends yet. So I'm going to make sure that this is long enough so that I can play around with the ends if I need to. Okay, with Deepest Sympathy. And so there I have it. And I think it needs just a little bit of anchoring, and I think this is a little bit too long. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit, make this sentiment fit a little bit better. I need to trim this down a little bit more. Okay. And now to anchor this a little bit, I'm going to bring in my black scrap again that I just cut stuff out of. And I just need a little bit to peek underneath. I'm going to just cut this off. See, even what you think is total scrap isn't necessarily. So this right here is about 2 1/4 inches. So I'm going to start with something that's 2 inches, I think. It's got a little bit of a, well, I guess I cut off the rougher edge part, but there's something that looks like that. So then we can just anchor that down just like that. And if you wanted to do the same thing on the top, look at what you could do. You could just split this in half because it's hidden anyway. Attach it at the bottom. I'll attach it at the top. Let's see how we like this. Yes, I think that's the look we're going to go for right there. So go ahead. I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive just at the top and just at the bottom, just to anchor these two pieces down here. And I want to make sure that this is nicely centered, or as centered as I can get it. Same thing up here. And I want about the same amount sticking off the edge. Let's see how we did here. Okay. We need a little bit more showing down here, I think. And that glue will dry clear. So now we have something that looks like that. And we could even put this over here. All right, that looks pretty good, I think. Put the cover on our glue, and we'll just need some dimensionals to pop that right off the page. We can do it up here. We can do it, I think I'm gonna do it right here. Just a little bit off center. All right. And there we have just a pretty easy card. So what did we do for the background? We ombre'd the background, and then we stenciled using a die cut the reverse image of the die cut, the negative, if you will. We stenciled a couple of flowers, and then we added some a cardstock flower and a butterfly. Now for the inside, we can do something on the inside. Let's go ahead and get a piece of basic white. It's 5 1/4 by 4 inches. This is going to go in here. Now remember this one that I had cut out? You could put that in there again, or you could just bring back this stencil and let's see, where's my scrap paper here? I can just stencil this little flower down here, just lightly, using some of that residual ink that I want to get off there anyway. And so just a very, very soft look down there. I could do actually a field down here. That would be kind of nice too. It's light enough so that you can go ahead and write on over it if you get lengthy in your sentiments. Okay, and so there we have a beautiful inside. I'll put this on the inside of my card, and then this can be sent off with the sentiment inside. And so there we go. This card that I'm about to do is not really featuring a background technique as much as putting something in the background in an unusual way. I want to begin by embossing on some vellum cardstock, and you will probably have a little bit of a difficulty seeing it on my scrap paper, but I do want to protect my surface because I'm going to be stamping off it so that a complete image might not be contained within its borders. So for instance, that daisy is partially on, partially off. I'm just going to continue doing this. It may be difficult for you to see on camera where I'm stamping, but I can tell because I can see some shine when I look at it just so in the light. So that helps me make sure I'm not stamping over another daisy. Then I'm going to bring in my embossing tray to keep my surface kind of neat. My ancient jar of embossing powder. These jars last a very, very long time. I'm going to use these reverse tweezers, which are really great if you don't want to get your fingers all powdery. So let's see. I'm just going to give that a little tap on the back, get some of that excess off. I probably should have used my embossing buddy to start because I can see that there are some rogue pieces of embossing powder sticking here, but I can just brush those off. And then I'm gonna funnel this back in. Now, obviously, if you have a newer bottle of embossing powder, you don't have to do this step. because you'll have more to play with in general. I'm just gonna switch this around. Make sure all of it gets covered. There we go. All right, and see if there's any strays here. There are, and I knew I touched down here. So that doesn't surprise me that there's some strays. A few strays won't matter. Might even add a little bit of character. I think that's good. So now we just need to heat this. I'm gonna put my powder away so that it doesn't melt in the process. Grab this again. Now when you're heating vellum, you want to be very careful. Let me move that out of the way so you can see what I've got going on. You don't want to burn it. Vellum is delicate, and you don't want to over melt. Oop, I can see that I have a little bit of a place right here. I'm gonna see if I can pick up some powder. There we go. I just had a spot that hadn't accepted the powder yet. I must have missed it the first time. So I'm gonna put this, I am gonna use high, although there is a low setting, but I'm going to move this around rather quickly. Another tip is to let your heat tool heat up first. It does take just 10 to 15 seconds to heat up nicely. And then we're just gonna move this around. Not staying too long in any one place, just sort of preliminarily heating the embossing. Oh, you can see some of it's starting to take now. Turns a bright white, and once it's done, you move along. So it's constant moving of my heat tool here. Not only can you burn vellum, but you can cause it to warp a lot if you're not evenly heating it. So this end's a little bit more stubborn, it seems. There we go. Okay, oops, one spot right here. There we go. All heated. Now don't touch it just yet. Give it a little bit of time to dry. Maybe go ahead and take your embossing powder and put it back in the jar. You don't want to touch it the second that you get done because you will burn yourself. That's melted plastic. So you just want to let it cool. It's fine now to touch. You can see that it's curled a little bit. We're going to compensate for that. You can let it rest a bit and it'll probably go back to normal. You could hit it on this side with the heat tool, but remember you've got melting plastic on the bottom, so if you reheat it again, it may stick to your surface, so you want to be careful there. So my daisies need centers, and I'm going to bring in my alcohol markers, my Stampin' Blends, and this is the Dark Daffodil Delight. And this is the side that has the embossing. I'm going to flip it over and just color. Now, any place I see white is not going to have the yellow show through. So it's okay if I go outside the edges here because the white is blocking that from showing on the other side. You'll be able to see what I mean in just a second when I flip this over. All right. And alcohol markers or blends will dry very quickly. It's the alcohol in them. So you can see that I've got yellow centers now for my daisies, but it's a little bit of a muted yellow because I've done it on the back. So it may be difficult for you to see, but right here, there was a little excess powder in the center there. So when it melted, that's why I can see white in here, because it's blocking that yellow from showing through. But still pretty cute. I'm going to flip it back to the reverse side again. I'm going to bring in the leaf stamp from the Cheerful Daisies set. And I'm going to add some leaves to my project. And that was silly. I added it. It's backwards. So we'll need to make sure that we get one going. So maybe that one's coming off from a different flower that's unseen. We'll go with that. Now I just want to make sure that I don't stamp over the yellow. It's okay to stamp over the white for the reasons we just discussed. Now, vellum will not absorb the ink as quickly. So if you touch this green right now, it will smear. Just be careful of that. Let's see, right there maybe. And maybe we have one coming off from a rogue flower over there. We've got a couple there. And maybe one right here. All right, so let's go ahead and close up our ink. Now remember, this is wet, so you want to be careful if you want to go ahead and bring in your reverse tweezers again. And they're reverse tweezers because you squeeze them to make them open. The first time I ever saw a pair of reverse tweezers, I was so confused. Like, how do I open these things? And so on the back, you can, when I flip it over to what's the front side, the back shows through, but it's a little muted. So it just gives a really interesting look, I think. Now I'm going to speed this drying along a little bit with my heat tool. And I'm using the low setting. And again, this is heating up the vellum. So if I'm focusing on the white part, the other side may begin to melt. So I don't want to stay too long in any one area. I'm just going to keep moving it along. I don't want to burn my vellum. I just want to help speed the drying. Now, if you have the time, you can certainly just leave this overnight and, or a few hours anyways, and it will sort of dry on its own. But if you're like me and impatient, then you'll want to use your heat tool. All right, so I can see that there's still a couple of wet spots because when I turn it just so in the light, it will glisten. But this is going to be good for me right now. I'm just going to set it aside and we'll work on the next piece. All right, I want to create a frame out of Lemon Lolly. And my frame is going to be, let's see, it's going to, the outside measure of the frame is going to be 3/8 of an inch smaller than a regular cardstock. So that's 5 1/8, which is 2 little tick marks after the 5. And it's going to be 3 7/8 in the other direction, which is 2 little tick marks before the 4. Now that's not a frame because it's just a rectangle. I want to cut out some here in the center. And I need to decide the width of my frame. I think I'm going to go with a 1/2 inch frame. And that's where the other side of this paper trimmer comes in handy. So over here, I can see there's a 1/2 inch mark right there, and that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to line that up there. And I'm going to go from a 1/2 inch on my ruler, and there's a little hash mark right here. I'm going to go from 1/2 inch all the way up to 1/2 inch on the other end, half an inch from the other end, which since this is 5 1/8, It's 2 little tick marks after 4.5. I know some of you are thinking, oh, this is too much math for me. I get it. I get it. So if I turn this clockwise now, it's going to be a little bit better for measuring. I'm going to, again, put my cardstock at the 1/2 inch mark. And then I'm going to go from where my line on my cutter lines up here. So see, I don't have to really do the measurement there. It is at 3 3/8, but I don't have to do the measurement. And I'm going to come down to about the 1/2 inch mark. Not about the 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to come down to the 1/2 inch mark. Then I'm going to rotate again and repeat. Put it at the 1/2 inch mark. And I'm going to come up here and pull down to 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to rotate one last time. And I'm going to connect the edges here. Now, you may find you're a little bit off, like over here. I was really close, but it just tears away pretty simply. If you look very closely, you can see a couple of places where I went over on my cut marks, but you really don't notice that. There's too much other stuff going on in this card. So now it looks like a frame. So I'm going to go on the back side of my frame, and you can see that my daisies are going to fit on here pretty nicely with just a little bit of room to spare all the way around. I didn't want my vellum showing through. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to put a very fine bead of glue. You can use whatever adhesive you want. Some of you are more comfortable with the Stamp and Seal or the tear and tape. And this is important now. You want the back side up. You want the daisies down to the front of the card. All right, and then I'm going to just press this in here and try. I'm pressing because it's mostly dry. I can see wherever I'm pressing over here, the green, if it might smear a little bit because it's not fully dry. Mine's looking pretty good actually. And so here we have the front. And let me bring in just this piece of white, sort of white. And you can see it kind of shows through right there. Kind of cool. Now we need to put this on something. And I'm going to create a card. And it is going to be a Lemon Lolly card base. So 5.5 by 4 1/4. Well, I'm scoring at 4 1/4. And my scoring blade just fell off. That was that noise you heard. There we go. Put my scoring blade in. Score at 4 1/4. I can fold that in half. Give it a burnish. Now I can lay this on here and pop this up with dimensionals, but I do have an option for you. Okay, and the option is to bring in a piece of basic white and put it underneath. And so you have a different look. You can see how things are a little bit brighter here. If I pop this up on dimensionals, it brightens it up, but still allows the daisies to kind of shine through. So it's really up to you how you like this. Now, there is another option. I can bring in a piece of garden green and layer that on there. And you can see then how you've got a nice little border, but it's very dark behind there. If you pop this up on dimensionals a little bit, it lightens it a bit. However, bring in a piece of basic white, and that's really bright. I think it's a little bit too bright for me. So what would look nice against a background of daisies? How about a blue sky? Let's go ahead and bring in a blending brush. And I'm going to bring in some Balmy Blue. I'm not sure what color was on here last, but it doesn't look like much comes off. So I'm going to ink up my blending brush. Take a little bit off and just add a little bit of blue color here. Maybe I bring it over here so I don't get ink on my surface. And it doesn't have to be a very dark layer of blue, and it doesn't have to be totally uniform because the vellum is, remember, kind of breaking up this thing in the background. It's muting it quite a bit. So let's see how this looks. So now it looks sort of like I've got some daisies going on in the background. I can make another layer right here. And yeah, that's gonna be all right, I think. So it's up to you what you have for the background. Let's go ahead and put our dimensionals on the frame edge. And remember, you don't want to put it anywhere in here because then it's going to show through. And I think I might just make it a little bit sturdier by putting a few more right here on this edge. All right, I think I got them all off. Move this out of the way. Let's add this. In fact, this one's just a little bit smaller. It might be easier to add it upside down. There we go. And then we can go ahead and add this to our garden green layer. So in your packets, should you choose to get the class kit, I will provide you with all the layers necessary. So I'll provide you with the garden green and the basic white, this lemon lolly, the vellum, so that you can pick and choose what you want. If you don't like the blue underneath, you don't need to have the blue underneath. If you want just white, you can. If you don't want to use the green at all, you don't have to. The choice is will be up to you. But I will provide you with all that cardstock so that you can make your own choice. So we'll put that right on there. And now all we need is a sentiment and maybe some bling. I'm going to bring in this scrap of lemon lolly and use one of the sentiments that's in that Cheerful Daisies stamp set, and that is wishing you the brightest birthday. Stamp that right there. And then in that Cheerful Daisies dies, there is this die. So I will die cut that and be right back. Now, if you don't have the die set, then go ahead and just, cut a rectangle and maybe stamp the sentiment and flag the end, do something like that, but I did have it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just adhere that right there. And I'm going to not use dimensionals because there's already some dimensionals in there. I'm going to just go ahead and use some glue. And then all we need to do is add some gems. Let's rub this off to the side a little bit. There we go. Make sure it's straight. All right, so now for gems. We're going to call this one a winner right here. that wheat does change color a little bit depending on what you're pairing it with. And I'm not exactly sure where my take your pick tool is at the moment, so we're just going to use our scissors. I do prefer my take your pick tool, but this scissors will work just fine. So we'll put one right here. And we'll put one up here. And maybe, let's see. I want to keep it a little bit balanced, so I think this has to come up here. And so there we have just a very pretty card. And of course, there will be a piece of basic white that you can layer inside, and you can stamp that how you would like. I did change the positioning of my gems. It's all about what you want to do. I wanted to call a little bit more attention to the greeting, and so I put them closer to the greeting. But the choice is yours. Let's go ahead and stamp an inside layer, and we just need to be very simple. I'm going to bring in the outline of the daisy that we'd used on the front. And I'm stamping it in Daffodil Delight just so it shows up a little bit more than if I did it in Lemon Lolly. For some reason, that is a very difficult one for me to say. So there's a daisy down at the bottom in Lemon Lolly, and we'll go ahead and stamp. Bring in a little protective gear here. Protect my surface. We'll just stamp a couple of leaves off it to the side. So now when we put that inside our card, we have a nice coordinating finished product. Here you can see I was experimenting with what I was going to put inside. I did find the Lemon Lolly to be a little bit too light to make much of a show. So there we go. So a background with a twist. We've used two sides of the vellum, a double-sided vellum background technique. It is just something that's in the background and letting our sentiment shine. While I'm at it, just a reminder that I do have a Cheerful Daisies Stamp Camp coming up on June 10th. And so registration for that ends on June 1st. So you won't want to delay too much longer, as I'm going to be getting ready to order everything necessary for that stamp camp. We're going to create 8 fantastic projects. I've had such a hard time even whittling it down which ones we're going to use. I wanted to show you an alternate frame look here. Here I've created a frame as well, but it's a scalloped frame. And the inside is kind of the reverse of the scallops. All I did was I used 2 coordinating rectangular scallop dies from the Scalloped Contours die set, which is one of my favorites. I nested them together and cut them all out at the same time. And that left me with this frame. But not only did it leave me with that frame, but it left me with this to use for some other option. Obviously, I could have, if it was maybe going landscape, I could have used that here. I mean, I suppose I still could use it here for a sentiment and a greeting inside as well. But that's just another fun alternative. You can even see that this kind of looks fun right on top. Well, not with the other one back there, but it's just a different look, but same kind of technique. Just a little bit less work than manually cutting out a frame. But now you know how to manually cut out a frame. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you have been inspired to create some beautiful backgrounds of your own. Get out those stamps, ink, and paper and dies and have a play. There's nothing more fun than creating, except creating something that will make someone else's day. Don't forget, if you would like a class kit to go along with tonight's class so that you can create 2 of each of the cards that I've created tonight, all you need to do is place an order of $35 or more before shipping and handling and tax in my online store. Remember, that link is below in the description of this video. If your order is $50 or more, I'm going to throw in a package of these elegant faceted gems. These are great. They're neutral colors, so they'll go with so many different things. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and let me know if you have any questions. We'll see you in a few weeks on the 2nd Tuesday of June. Can you believe it? June already. We'll see you then.